Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Spirit Tarot and Healing Arts YouTube channel. If you are new, welcome back. If you are a returning viewer, I'm Rin, and this is going to be a new episode of Rin Plays. You'll notice that this time we're not playing a video game, but I decided that I wanted to try something with this role-playing game that I got. I wanted to play the game and incorporate tarot cards. Now, please forgive me, I am having a little bit of trouble with my voice, and I've got a bit of a cough, so I may have to pause a few times throughout recording this, but what we are playing today is a single-player journaling RPG called Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. Now, this is an indie game, and you can either purchase a hardback book of the game, or you can purchase the PDF version only, which is what I did. And I will link to the creator's website where you can buy the PDF version from the creator. This is the official site where you can buy Thousand-Year-Old Vampire to make sure that the proceeds go to the person who created the game. Now, I am not in any way affiliated with the creator of this game. I just happened to purchase it because I thought it would be fun, and I just finished my first playthrough of the game, and I was like, you know what might be really interesting is if I incorporated tarot. Now, you'll notice that my recording setup is a little bit odd. You're going to see a little bit of my computer here. You guys know that I actually haven't been using my camera lately because I just don't have a good way to record video, but we're gonna make do the best we can with what we've got so that I can show you guys how to play this game. So to play Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, you need a journal, you need a pencil, and you need 2 dice. You need a D10 or a 10-sided die, and a D6 or a 6-sided die for those who are not used to RPGs. We just abbreviate these as a D10 and a D6, and that just indicates how many sides the dice have. So that is what you need to play the game as it is created and written. However, I have decided to sort of challenge myself here, and I'm also going to be using a tarot deck with the game. So I'm going to pause for a second real quick, open up my journal, and show you guys kind of how I set up my gameplay space in my journal. The idea of this game is that you get to play as the Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. You are playing a character at the point that they are turned, and then you will play them up through their true death. And it's called Thousand-Year-Old Vampire because vampires tend to live a very long time. Now, I'm not going to play the whole game here on YouTube. I'm going to just kind of give you guys an idea of how to play and how I'm incorporating tarot in how I'm going to play this particular playthrough of the game. But I do need to warn you, this is a Thousand-Year-Old Vampire game. We are going back in history, and the game does force you to make some unsavory choices. So if you are on the squeamish side, or there are certain things that you find traumatic or very unsettling for you, this might not be the game for you. I will tell you, in my first playthrough, it really wasn't anything that I found taxing. While I had to make some difficult choices as my Thousand-Year-Old Vampire self, it was nothing too traumatic or unsavory in my first playthrough, but I know that there can be situations in this game where you do have to make some truly disturbing choices, and that's what this game is about. It is about choices. This is a game where there is not necessarily a happy ending, if really a happy ending at all. I don't know. In my first playthrough, when my vampire met her final death, her true death, she actually was relieved. Like, it was, she was ready for it to be over. So even though it ended sort of tragically, she was ready for that. It was time. She was tired. So, I mean, in a way, it was release, and that's what she wanted. But at the same time, it is, you know, this tragic situation and this final true death. So just keep that in mind. I do want to make that clear, and the creator of the game does make this clear as well. There's even a passage in the book that warns you about the fact that you're going to have to make some unsavory decisions, and that, you know, really the purpose of some of the prompts in this game is to get you to step outside of your comfort zone. So I'm going to pause for a second real quick, set up my new character sheet, and then I'm going to show you how I set that up in the journal to play the game. And then after I do that, I'm going to show you how I plan to use the tarot cards in this playthrough. Alright, I've set up essentially what is my character sheet for this playthrough. Now, you will need the dice because the dice you use in conjunction with the PDF or the hardbound book. These are what you roll to get your prompt. So there's, I think, about 80 or 90 prompts, and then there's some extra prompts in the book. And each of those, I can't remember whether it's 80 or 90 in the standard prompts. Each of those has 3 prompts to it, so that if you land on a prompt more than once, you've got a couple of options, and then you've got the additional prompts in the back of the book if you need them as well. And just to go over it, what you do is you roll your 2 dice. We get a 9 on the 10, and we got a 5 on the D6. So we subtract the D6 from the D10 always, and then however many is left, so in this case 4, I would move to the 4th prompt for my first prompt in the game. Yes, you can get a negative number. You can move back prompts. Obviously, not for your first prompt, but as you play through the game, you are supposed to move backwards as well. However, I will tell you that if you do that, it can make the game play incredibly long. There are a couple different ways to play this game. I am playing the longer way, but I am playing a shorter version of the longer way, if that makes sense, because I do not go backwards in prompts. If I get a negative number, I just take another prompt from the number of prompt that I'm already on, roll again, and then move ahead when I get the next positive number. So that's how I do it, because it was getting too long for me when I was using the negative numbers and going back prompts. And I have heard a couple other people say the same thing. Someone else would do what I do, where if they roll a negative number, they'd stay on the same prompt page and just take another prompt off that page. But they would only, when they got a negative number, every other time they got a negative number, they would actually follow that backwards in prompts to try to streamline their game a little bit. I found that with my ADHD, I needed to just use positive number prompts. So if I got a negative number, I stayed on the same prompt. And if I got a positive number, then I moved ahead that many prompts. So that's what the dice are for. You're probably not going to see a lot of the dice usage in this video. I do have the book open so that I have my prompts if I decide that I want to go ahead and actually show you maybe one of the prompts and how that works. But in the beginning, you're going to follow the directions at the beginning of the book. You're going to set up your first memory, which is comprised of 3 events. The book explains that really well. I'm not going to explain it in this video because you do need to purchase that PDF in order to play this game. So all of that, the gameplay mechanics are explained in there, and I think that the creator explained them really well. But we have to create our character first, and I'm going to use the tarot for that process. But this is how I found, for me personally, the best way to set up the journal to play this game is to do the first 2 pages like this, where you start with memories up here and leave these 2 pages for memories, because you're going to need space for that in the game. I did not leave myself enough space in my first playthrough, and it kind of just annoyed me how I had it set up. So learning for my first playthrough, plenty of space for the memories, and they really are what fuels this game. And you can play this game in a way where you're only working with the memories. You're not doing the journal entries like I do. The next page here, I have characters. You have to remember that you are going to be a very old vampire as we get through this game. So the mortal characters that you start out with are not going to stay with you. More characters are going to have to be created as they enter into the game through whatever plot points you happen to roll. So I really ran out of room and had to cram stuff in the way I set up my first journal entry for this. So give yourself a full page for characters. You will wind up getting more skills and resources than you start out with. So I recommend a column for skills, a column for resources. Have them take up most of the page, and then down here have marks, and then you can put your marks down here. It'll depend on the prompts you roll as to how many marks you wind up with during the course of this game. I probably don't need quite that much room for marks, but I want to leave enough because you never know. Some of my marks from the first playthrough, I didn't really write good notes for the mark or descriptors for the marks because I didn't have enough room. So while I don't know that I'll use all of this room for marks, I may. It'll just depend on partially on the roll of the dice. But definitely leave this room for skills and resources because you will lose skills and resources as you play the game, but you will also get more skills and resources as you go through the game. Now, ways that you win/lose this game, basically how the game ends, is either you are out of all of your skills and resources, or you come to a prompt that tells you you have met your true death, your final death, and the game is now over. So those are the ways that the game ends. That's what you're working towards. As I said, this really isn't meant to be a happily ever after kind of game. So you're not working towards a certain goal. There's not something that your character is trying to necessarily achieve. You're just surviving as a vampire. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. So how we start out is by deciding who we are. And this is where I'm going to bring in the tarot for some of this. We start off by deciding who we are, creating our first memory. We create a certain number of characters, skills, resources, marks, etc. And then on this page, after all of those pages, this is where we start our journal entries as our character. Generally speaking, the creator suggests about a paragraph for each prompt. If you really feel like telling a long, involved story, you can absolutely run with it. How I'm going to use the tarot cards with this playthrough is that certain things I'm going to have the tarot cards decide. So, first of all, let's try to decide where in the world I start out as this vampire. So I'm going to pick a card, and I am using the Antique Anatomy Tarot for this. I wanted something spooky. I don't actually own a vampire tarot deck, believe it or not. I just haven't found one that I've clicked with. And I also have to be careful about what decks I use here on YouTube. So this one has not been flagged for anything by anybody so far as I know. So we're going to use this one because it does have a bit of a creepy vibe. I feel like it goes with the vampire aesthetic in a way, and shouldn't get me in any trouble with YouTube. So let's find out where my character starts out. Alright, we've got the Magician. So what do I associate with the Magician? You know, my mind immediately goes to the French psychics who, you know, really advanced tarot to what we know it as today. Because before that, it was a trick-taking game that started in Italy. Now, we're going to go with this because that is what that made me think of first. is the French occultists and mystics and psychics of that particular time period. So, you know what? That is where we are going to start. I kind of hesitate to do that, and the reason why is I chose France for the origin of my last vampire, but this time we're going to go with Paris, France. Now, you will find that you do very often have to consult our friend Google for historic information, getting names and things like that to use in this game. So that is part of why this game can take a little bit longer, because in order to make your decisions, you may need to look up some historical facts or names that were popular, etc. I spent a lot of time researching names and regions in my first playthrough. So we're going to go with France. So we know that the tarot arrived in France mid 17th century. So let's just we're going to have our setting be France. And let's go with the year 1667. Just because this made me think of that place and time, and so that's where we're gonna set our game this time. Now, I will be a female character. I do not get to go ahead and just pick how I was turned or anything like that. I do get to create a memory that will have my name, which I need to think of a good name. Oh, let's go with Claire. And then we'll be able to put one more thing into that, but I'm not sure what we're putting there yet. I'm probably not going to use the cards to determine the characters, the skills, the resources. I may if I'm stumped, but I'm probably not going to. I'm probably going to go through the rules and outline all that. I think I get 3 skills, 3 resources. I can't remember if I start off with a mark or not. Let me go back and look here. I believe I start with 1 mark. Just looking at my last playthrough. And I know that I start with an immortal character, and I believe I start with 1 or 2 mortal, 1 immortal, and I believe a couple of mortal characters. I might pull court cards for the characters. So like I'll create the characters to make sense in the time and place, but I may pick court cards to determine some of the characteristics of the characters in the game. So we'll pull court cards for that. Let me just see. So here we've got the King of Rods. So what I may do is, let's just say the person who turned me is your first immortal character in this game. So let's just say that his name is Jean. And because we're in France, we're in Paris, France. So let's just say his name is Jean, and he is represented by the King of Wands. So he could be seen as someone who's very persuasive, even manipulative, because the King of Wands can talk anybody into doing anything, really. So those could be characteristics, or if you go by the astrology correspondences, you could alternately or in conjunction with, I could give him those characteristics. I don't want to use my pencil to point. Where is my pointer? I don't know at the moment. Anyhow, I could use those characteristics and the astrology. So it could be that Jean is a Sagittarius, or at least when he was a human, he was a Sagittarius. Or I could take this that Jean was turned and became a vampire during Sagittarius season. So I'm just showing you guys different options, different ways that I could use the court cards to help me flush out better characters for the story. Now, if I wanted to do skills and resources, because I haven't fully flushed out my character yet, I haven't found a job for her. She might not have a job. Maybe she was a housewife. Yeah, I mean, she's listed as an occultist, but keep in mind this was the late 1600s. Women didn't have a lot of options. So maybe, I was more lower class in my first playthrough. Maybe this particular woman, maybe she's more of an aristocrat. Her husband is an occultist, and so she got into it as well by being married to him. So we could do that. But skills and resources, if I opt to do them by tarot cards, we could just shuffle, as you hear me doing. Cards are wanting to jump out. But we could pick a card and then see what skill we associate with it. So we've got the Queen of Coins. So skill, very good at taking care of others, maybe tending wounds. So maybe that's something that my character just kind of made. This card would indicate that she's probably a wife and mother. And so for skills, pentacles, coins can relate to physical health. So maybe she's really good at medicine or healing art. So you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to put that in there. We're going to put medicine as her skill. But you can see how I just go down a rabbit hole, if you will, of what I associate a card with, and then whatever category we are looking for. So like I said, let's write in Jean over here. Okay, as our first character. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Drawing a card and then allowing that to flavor or color what it is I'm looking for. And I'm not only going to use this for the creation of everything for the game, but when we get back here to where we start doing the journal entries as we do the prompts, I'm going to get the prompt and then I'm going to draw one card to color how I answer / respond to that prompt. If I need to, I can draw another one, but I'm going to try to just draw one card per prompt. So our first prompt, and I don't have all my skills and everything yet, but my first prompt, it would be 2 - 1. So the first prompt is my first prompt. But I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm going to finish filling in my character stuff, my pre-game stuff, if you will. And then I'm going to show you the first prompt and how I'm going to use the tarot to answer that. All right, so I am all set up now. I've got everything ready to play. And I've even checked out my first prompt. Now, when you start out, you are only allowed 5 memories for your vampire. Each memory consists of 3 experiences. So my first memory slot is completely full. That first memory is who I was. So with the cards that I drew, I am Claire, I'm a French occultist, I'm a wife and mother. Then you have to come over here to your skills and resources. I drew cards for those, except for Bloodthirsty. I get that with my first prompt. You'll see in a second. So I drew cards. I got medicine. I got horseback riding. That was the Knight of Wands. That's where I went with that. Necromancy. I got judgment, and that is where I fell down a rabbit hole that turned into necromancy. By drawing cards, I also got that I owned an apothecary in Paris. I have a ritual blade, and I have a magic staff. Diaries, it's the one thing that I'm a little unclear on with the booklet, because it tells you to have 3 resources, but then it tells you can have a diary, and you have to tie your 3 skills that you start with and your 3 resources that you start with together into experiences to make 3 of your memories to start out with. So each one has 1 experience, and then you have to do an experience of how you were turned. So I have all of those I've tied those together into experiences for 3 of my memories. And then I've got my memory of Jean turning me into an immortal. And so the card I drew for that was the Hanged Man. And so my story, my memory is that I was in a crowd at a public execution in Paris, and he came up behind me, bit me on the neck, and turned me there as I was standing in the crowd. I want to show you another card that I pulled for the mark. The mark that I have is a red webbing of veins on the left side of my neck. That's where he bit me. And the card that I pulled for that was the Eight of Blades. And I don't know why, I just kind of thought of spider webs, and because these just kind of web out to me. And one of the meanings I have for the Eight of Blades is sickness. And so I was like, oh yeah, that would look like I have some sort of sickness or ailment going on there. And so that worked for me. Now I did, for my characters, we already saw that I had Jean, and he was turned during the Sagittarius season. Then I have Andre, who's my husband, Pierre, who is my son, and Amélie, who is my daughter. And I pulled court cards for them to get their zodiac signs. Andre is a Scorpio, Pierre is a Gemini, Amélie is an Aquarius. You will notice that Pierre, or maybe you can notice, it might be too light in the video, but I've already got Pierre crossed out, and that is because of our first prompt. So now we're going to do the journal entry for the first prompt, and I'm going to keep the Hangman here because that is important. The first prompt has to do with me being turned and becoming bloodthirsty, and in not knowing how to act because I have just been turned, I wind up feeding off of and killing someone close to me, and in this particular case that happened to be my son Pierre. So I'm going to draw another card to kind of get some more details, maybe how I killed Pierre or something, anything that can fit in with this narrative. So I'm just trying this out, so I haven't really completely 100% refined how I will choose the cards, like what questions I will ask. But I thought this would be a really fun exercise for expanding on my skill and using the tarot in a new and different way, which I always encourage people to do because that does help you to develop as a reader. Even when we're not doing an actual reading, we're playing a game with the cards. So now we have the Six of Blades. Okay, and that actually makes a lot of sense and fits in well. And every time we do a journal entry like this, we then have to go and add it into a memory or create a memory for it. Now, I probably would have worded this a little bit differently if I was not doing this on YouTube. But so what I wrote from these cards and the prompt all in combination together is that while standing in the crowd at the execution, I feel something sharp pierce my neck. I touch the spot with my hand to find small droplets of blood. That night, my ears begin to ring. My vision turns red, and I'm hungry in a way no food can satisfy. When my sight and hearing finally clear, Pierre is a crumpled and lifeless form in my arms. That is how I used the tarot to set up my game, create my character, and it's how I'm going to use the tarot to do my journal entries. I'm going to draw 1 to 2 cards and interpret them in regards to the prompt to help me create the story of Claire, who will eventually, hopefully, if she lives long enough, become a 1,000-year-old vampire herself. And it'll be interesting, too, to see if Jean comes back around, because sometimes the maker just makes and dips and you never see them again. And other times the maker is very involved in the fledgling's existence. But that is what I did. Like I said, this is just fun. It's a fun game on its own, just as it was written. I had the idea that I wanted to incorporate tarot into this particular playthrough. I thought that it would really add a little something, and it's a great way. I talk about improving your accuracy and your quality of tarot readings, that, certain things help with that, including challenging yourself and looking at the cards in new and different ways. And that doesn't always have to be in the context of an actual real world reading. Something like this game, incorporating the tarot into this game, can be a great exercise for really helping you to go farther and deeper with the tarot. So if you want, remember, I will link where you can buy Thousand Year Old Vampire in the description box below. Again, I am not affiliated with the creator of the game. I just happened to purchase the game for the fun of it. And then after my first playthrough, I thought, wouldn't it be really fun to do a second playthrough, but incorporate the tarot into that playthrough? And I thought I'd share it with you all in case any of you want to try this or try something similar to this. Maybe it'll give you some inspiration, but just for something fun and that can also enhance your skills as a reader, I thought I would share this with all of you. So let me know what you think of this video. Let me know if you've ever tried incorporating tarot into some sort of game that you've played. I love to hear from you all, so leave all that in the comment section down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you like this kind of content. If you haven't already, please subscribe because it helps me out so much. Please do remember that through my website, I do offer one-on-one mentorships in things like learning tarot. If you are interested in that, I provide other mentorships as well. If you'd like to book a reading with me, you can also do that through my website or through my Etsy shop. And if you need a journal in order to play the 1,000-Year-Old Vampire with or without tarot, remember that I do have a shop now dedicated just to my own line of journals. And until I see you again, blessings to you. Oh, and I want to mention that I did reopen the Facebook group, so you can join the Spirit Tarot and Paranormal AF community page on Facebook. I'll have the link to that in the description box as well. But until I see you again, blessings to you wherever your journey finds you.